participation in World War I. Their tight circle included not only the Harriman brothers, but also the wiry, intense Robert A. Lovett, whose father, Robert S. Lovett, had served as the elder Harriman's general counsel. But while they had reveled in the prosperity of the 1920s, they were not immune to the storms outside in 1930. As they headed to their reunion, cosseted in their private car, playing poker for stakes well in excess of the average weekly wage from millions of Americans, they knew that all was not well in the world. Both Harriman and Brown Brothers were teetering under the weight of credit they had extended to businesses that could no longer repay. Given the deep personal connections between the partners of the firms, it might have seemed organic when the idea of a merger was broached over poker and scotch. Other firms weren't merging. They were collapsing, and both Harriman and Brown Brothers needed to shore up their business and preserve their capital. Brown Brothers had more than a century on Harriman's firm. It was a titan of Wall Street, but in reputation and standing rather than size. It was not particularly large in assets, but its influence and reach were as extensive as the flashier J.P. Morgan & Co. or the much larger Chase National Bank, which was infused with Rockefeller money. Because Brown Brothers was a partnership without one figurehead, it attracted neither notoriety nor much public attention, and it did not have the benefit of one man's fortune ever at the ready. The partners of Brown Brothers shunned the public spotlight and cultivated a sterling reputation within the close-knit world of finance and banking. To become a partner, each man had to be invited, and then was required to contribute his share to the firm's working capital. Like all partnerships, Brown Brothers lent and invested the partners' money. Each deal had to be assessed in terms of how much of their own personal fortune they were willing to risk. In sharp contrast to the investment banks and venture firms and private equity groups of today, the partners at Brown Brothers were not agents acting on behalf of anonymous shareholders or mammoth institutions. Every Brown Brothers partner was personally exposed. They could gain immensely or lose painfully from each deal. But by the end of 1930, as the economic collapse accelerated not just in the United States but around the world, transactions and deals that had looked sound and wise a year earlier turned sour. Even after each of the Brown Brothers partners had ponied up more money to cover losses, they were skirting peril. The firm had been in business for more than 120 years, since Alexander Brown set up shop, aided by his 4 sons, in Baltimore. It was unclear whether it could last into 1931. Thatcher Brown, great-grandson of Alexander and managing partner of his firm, saw that drastic action was necessary. Though nearly a generation separated him from those young bucks on the train, Thatcher, a product of the same schools and the same upbringing, was essentially an older version of them. The cohort of younger Yale grads saw the opportunity, but it was Thatcher and his older cousin James who understood the need. So did Averell Harriman, who was flush with the millions provided by his father's fortune. He had money, but his business was struggling as well. Brown Brothers had the history and the standing. And so, following that genial conversation over cards and drinks in a first-class railcar, it was agreed that the two firms would merge to save both, with the fortune of Harriman attached to the reputation of Brown Brothers. For Wall Street, that innocuous December New York Times headline wasn't so innocuous. It signaled to the financial world that 2 of the major players of Wall Street would, at least for the moment, be fine. In a time of rampant bank closures and widespread panic, the announcement of the formation of Brown Brothers Harriman was a respite, a message that said, "It will be all right. There is shelter in the storm." The Great Depression would get considerably worse before it got better, but Brown Brothers Harriman remained standing and became a pillar of what would soon be called the American establishment. Its partners would play a central role in the creation of what Time's founding editor and fellow Yale alum Henry Luce dubbed the American Century, a mid-20th century imperium that saw a marriage of American money and American power that spanned the globe. It didn't last a century, but at its apex, the American century was staffed by Brown Brothers.